Figs are one of the most lucrative fruits we grow here on the Big Island. They're easy to cultivate, nurture, and harvest, a little difficult to handle post-harvest, but well worth the effort. Brie Dupertis grows over 70 types of fruit on her Honaunau farm, but much of her profit comes from figs. She says the key to handling figs is to be gentle.
The important thing for figs is because they're so tender and they ripen so quickly once they're harvested. So you want to first and foremost make sure that they're free of broken skin. So when you take it off from the tree, some figs will have a tendency to rip right at the top of the fruit. So you want to be gentle there. Of course, bugs and birds like figs, so you want to check the fruit carefully when you're harvesting it, that it doesn't have any peck holes or anything in it. And also it'll bruise really easily, but if you keep it from rolling around, keep it from getting too bruised, and make sure that the skin is not broken, it can actually have a nice shelf life. When you're harvesting, it's important to know there's two main markets that we go for. There's commercial ripe and then there's tree ripe. Commercial ripe might be for a chef who's going to cook it down into something, preserve it, make a sauce. In this case, you can harvest it much more early on in its ripening process. It's going to be a little bit harder if they want it to display and keep its shape on a platter. They want it to be a little bit less ripe so that they can monitor the ripening process a little bit more. If it's tree ripe and people want to eat it fresh, you want to wait a little bit longer, let it get a little softer on the tree before you harvest it. And the sugar will begin to come out sometimes even as much as 10% within a day if you let it ripen on the tree. It's a lot sweeter. When you're harvesting commercial ripe, figs have a natural resistance to predators, and this really sticky latex comes out. If you're harvesting, you have a few trees and you want to harvest for yourself, you may not notice it, but if you're like me or you really want to commercial farm figs and you're harvesting every single day, it's really important to wear long sleeves, wear gloves, because that sap, when you're harvesting for commercial ripe, will end up getting on you, and it does what it's supposed to do. It deters people from picking the fruit. It'll end up burning your skin or being a minor irritation. If you harvest a fig too early on in its ripeness, if it's too hard coming off the tree and you put it on the shelf and expect it to ripen, it usually won't. It will soften, but it won't ripen. It won't increase its sugar content. I just harvested this fruit here, and I harvested a little too fast. I wasn't careful enough to make sure that the stem of the fruit remained intact, pulling it off of the tree. Even though the rest of the fruit is beautiful, as you can see on this one, because this one has the stem still attached to the fruit, it's going to be a sealed fruit. It's going to have a much longer shelf life than even just tearing off the top of the fruit. It might not be ideal for certain customers. Probably the three main varieties of figs grown in Hawaii currently are the white Kadota, the brown turkey, and to a lesser degree, the black mission fig. All these are at a stage of what I would call commercial ripeness. So how do you know when it's a green fig? How do you know when to harvest it? It's the most common question I get. Is it ripe yet? It's still green. Here in this hand, I have an unripe fig, not sellable. It's much darker. It's hard as a rock almost. You can see this lightening, more lime green in this fig, the white Kadota. It's bruisable to the touch. This is still commercial ripe. It'll get even lighter when it's tree ripe. When you're harvesting the fig and you've decided that it's ripe enough for your purposes, you want to hold it in your hand gently and get your thumb and your finger by the branch next to the stem of the fruit. Pull down gently and it should come right off. You'll feel it start to tear. The stem will start to tear from the branch. This fruit here, it kind of just formed a little bit funny. It's a little bit small. You can see these black spots indicate that there's a fungus that might take hold of it in the next couple days. You're probably not going to sell it. You may or may not want to eat it depending on how far along the fungus is. You still want to take it off the tree. You don't want to encourage the fungus to spread. You don't want to encourage ants to come and eat it. and perhaps spread that fungus or just infest your tree with ants. So you can take it off the tree and cull it out later when you do your quality control. Once you've harvested all the figs that you're going to harvest that day, it's time to wash them, quality control them, and package them for whoever it is that's going to be buying your figs. So I've got a little wash basin full of water here. This is generally what I do. I just kind of pop them in one at a time, check them as I'm putting them in the water, making sure they're free of any sort of dust, or one more time to look and see if there's any peck holes or tears that you may have missed in the process of harvesting them. I set them on a little towel first until I get as many as I want for the tray or for the packaging or the box, whatever it is that I'm going to use. Once you're confident that the fruit is ready to go, the important thing is packaging. Depending on who your customer is, the packaging might be a little bit different. If you're selling to a grocery store or to a farmer's market, more direct, right to the customer, not necessarily to a chef, little clamshells are a good idea. Small, it keeps the fruit from rolling around and bruising itself. And if you're selling wholesale, they tend to want a little bit more than 4 or 5 at a time, so it's okay to use a larger packaging. Maybe not too large, because once they start rolling around, it gets kind of chaotic. If you put if they're going to put it right in the fridge, if you put a little paper towel on the bottom, it'll regulate a little bit of the condensation, the wetness from washing it, or the condensation from the fruit as it sits in the fridge, if they're going to let it sit for a few days. You don't want to smush them in there, but you do want it so they won't roll around. And then a little paper towel on top. For the larger distributors, people that know that they want a lot more, maybe you're going to ship them somewhere, you can use a packaging much like this. This keeps them from rolling around. You can see that all these packages, we could try and push it. This is the top is the harder part of the fruit, where the soft is the bottom. The softer part is the bottom of the fruit. So if you put each fig with the hard part on the bottom, the weight of the fruit is pressing on the hard part. That might prolong the shelf life a little bit. Okay, so once you have harvested, quality controlled, you feel confident with your packaging, regarding whether it's tree ripe or commercial ripe, it can last up to 3 to 7 days.
Good?
It's really good.